Closed captioning for A Piece of the Woods was brought to you by Schroeder's Log Home Supply, supplying builders for over 20 years. Underwriting for A Piece of the Woods was brought to you by
Extreme Interiors International, building log homes for over 20 years. But we don't stop at the structure. We expose the hidden art of nature, the diverse character of trees into your habitat. To us, it's not a building project, it's an art project.
There are still a few American companies dedicated to bringing quality into your workplace. We are one of them. Quality Manufacturing Company. Quality tools for quality work.
Tenonizer Technology, an original equipment manufacturer dedicated to improving the quality of log construction for the log building family, finding better ways to bring a piece of the woods into your home.
Great Woods Cabinetry is a full custom cabinet shop, working projects from the start or just at the finish. From online to on-site, check us out at www.greatwoodscabinetry.com.
This begins our series of log accenting of a conventional home. We're going to be looking at the differences between building a log home or, in this case, building a conventional home with logs in mind on today's A Piece of the Woods. This is really a work of art. And the joinery that's in this place and the column for the next post, but in order to get this post like Papa. Whenever you go to start building something, eventually you get to the place where you're going to have to count the cost. Now this is a beautiful house and a lot of building, but if you built this out of log, you could easily get to the place where it would be twice the price. Now take a look at the things on this log house over here. Now this is really a work of art. And the joinery that's into this place and the columns and the roof structure and all of the thought, the preparation. You know, besides that, the thing came down from British Columbia. But it is a work of art every step of the way. And when you're working with the surfaces, you know, like the log itself, you handle a log, and when you handle it, you have to remember that the outside is the finished surface of the house all the time, and the inside of the log is the inside wall. So everything in the handling of the log work as it goes along has to be so gentle along the way. This is a naturally occurring cat face, correct?
It can be, and some of them in the building are naturally occurring cat faces. And the tree, when it gets damaged, tends to grow in and try and cover the damage.
Yeah, like a porcupine chewing on it.
Exactly.
Growing around
on that, and that's and in most wood species, it gets that sort of lens shape to it. Mm-hmm. So cedar, because it's so soft and damages so easily when it's fallen in the forest, if it hits another tree on the way down, it'll get damaged.
So there's a big old booger right there.
Yeah, exactly. And it rather than just cut the whole thing out and flatten it out, we carve in a little lens shape, and we have several in this building. If you think it's a small one, you'll plane it out. If it's just a small one, you plane it out, and you plane a bit, and then it seems to grow in
bigger.
And then you're committed. So that's what happens there.
This log work, just think of it as it's like a hard sponge, okay? Now, humidity is going to change, and that's going to change the moisture content in the wood, and that's going to change the size of the wood. Since this house was shipped from British Columbia here, the logs have actually gotten bigger. Where this house was built in British Columbia, it is normal for the moisture content in the wood to go down to around 8% just naturally. Here in Minnesota, the average moisture content on the inside of a house, because of our high humidity, is going to be running around 18%. In the wintertime, it might get down to maybe 15%. Now what that means, as time goes along, things get bigger and smaller. In the wintertime, the door on the bedroom closes real nice. In the summertime, that same door hits the jamb and it goes thunk, 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 and you go, why? Well, it's because of the moisture expansion, the effect that the moisture has on the wood. But now, we've got 3 different things going on here in this corner. We have, you see I can get my fingers right in here. Now this is an outside corner, and they've scribed this intentionally with a little bit of space here so that as the log gets wet, this outside wall, as it gets wet, it can dry out. So moisture is not trapped up in this space here. Now, initially this scribe here on the saddle cut is made perfectly tight. But then right behind me here, they did something called underscribing. Now, when they fit it together initially in British Columbia, there was a space right here. As they set the log in place, there was a space here approximately 1/2 inch. Now, the reason they did the overscribing was that so once the logs shrink, they'll shrink more in diameter than they will lengthwise. And what that means is that as the diameter changes in the saddle cut, this notch needs to get consistently tighter. And in order to do that, they needed the overscribed space so the saddle notch can come down and then the lateral notch ends up tight. Joining the 2 logs together about every 4 feet, John uses an oak dowel. It's square cut and coated with a wax to make it a little bit slippery. And then the log were drilled, and there is one of these pins, these oak pins, about every 4 feet all the way around every course going through the whole house. Now, one of the problems can get into if using steel instead of the wood is that the steel has a tendency of collecting condensation as the temperature goes up and down, and it can actually rot out sections of the house if using a steel pin instead of the wood. The wood will not collect the condensation like the steel can. There's 8 posts like this on this sunroom. Each one is set solid to the floor. On top of each post, there's it's like a little car jack is what it is, set on the top of each post, accessible from the inside to lower the roof as the rest of the house sinks, as it dries out and settles down. Everything in the log house has to accommodate the shrinkage while the house is drying down. Now check out this spot above me here at the top corner of the door. You can see how the space has been built in for the to come down around the door frame so it doesn't squish. You can't let it squish the door frame. That'd be really bad. Take a look at the overhang that we've got on this house. It's 3 feet out from the wall, 8 feet of wall height, and that's a lot of protection for this conventional built home. But we're talking about the differences between a log house and a conventional home. On a log house, you want to have, for every 10 feet going up, you want 4.5 feet of roof coming out. See how far that comes all the way out like that? Next thing, look down at the base here. In the splash zone where water's coming down off the overhang and it's splashing up, this is almost 2 feet up out of the ground before it gets to any log work. You want to protect this, keep this dry. And then over to my side here, here's one of these posts, one of these big columns, and our adjustment for the house shrinking, coming down, because it's going to shrink about 1/2 inch to the foot. Just one more thing to pay attention to. So there's so much forethought that has to be done into a log house. Even though a conventional home is a lot of work, there's a lot to it, it's nothing compared to a well-built work of art log home. This is a conventional house we built with logs in mind. Now it's pretty much an average 2x6 stud frame, conventional trusses, but there's a lot of things we did here in preparation for the log work and just being a little bit different that is not average. Let's go back to the beginning, pretty much back to the foundation, and take a look at this from the ground up. Good morning. Such a beautiful day we have out here today. I want to talk with you first about what we've done to put our walls together. This is our concrete forms here. Now as it goes together,
they just kind of stack up. It's a very easy assembly, and you can add in the inside of it before you pour the concrete. You can add the steel rod and rebar and reinforcing. See, we've got our coils all laid out on the floor for our heating, but underneath of the coils we've put styrofoam inside the building underneath of the dirt. Now what we've gone with is underground grade of styrofoam 2 inches thick. We've got 2 layers of this 1-inch material, and we went with 2 layers instead of one 2-inch layer, so that this 1-inch foam would copy to the ground better, form to the ground. We've got all the tubing for the hot water heat all spaced evenly throughout the floor here, and it's going way underground. We've got 16 inches of cement and dirt going over the top of this. We want maximum heat storage. It's just a giant thermal battery.
Now we've got natural gas out here, and we are on the end of the line. And just in case that we lost our service, I wanted more protection in there. If we lost natural gas, if we lost it, it'd take a week before this house would freeze because of the depth that it's into the dirt. But underneath of those coils is 2 inches of styrofoam also, so the heat doesn't go down. It can't escape going down, it just comes up. And with that much mass that's there, we'd have, like a week before it'd freeze, and we have such even heat through the floor. It's just such a nice thing to get up, walk across the tile floors, and your feet are toasty warm. On a straight conventional house, we would have either full depth frost footings or, in most cases, a full basement. But for one, I suffer from the pack rat syndrome. Something goes into the basement and then it never leaves again. So we just cut the basement out altogether. And the way that we did that, and still have a very sound, safe, long-lasting house, is we've got the footing right down here on the ground, of course. But then coming out from the footing, we have 2 inches, a full 2 inches of styrofoam that comes out 8 feet out from the building. And then when this is all done, there'll be a foot of dirt on top of it, but the styrofoam will protect and keep the frost from going down under the ground, coming up and moving the house by moving and freezing and moving the footing. The styrofoam will protect that from happening. Well, you can see that the house is still standing, solid as a rock, and instead of taking that $30,000 or $40,000 and putting it into a basement where it just collect dust and stuff, we're going to take that 30-40 grand and we are going to put it into the log accent work of this pretty much conventional 2x6 stud frame house. We've got Western red cedar siding, we got 3-foot overhangs on the one side, we got 2-foot overhangs on the other. We've got just regular conventional windows. It's pretty much a standard stick frame house until we go to the inside and take a look at the log support structure. Actually, log support structure in the loft floor and in that area. So let's go in and take a look. The logs that you see here are actually part of the support structure. In a conventional home, you'd have floor joists, floor joists, floor joists, and then you'd cover it with sheetrock. Oh, sheetrock, yuck. But we've got, in this case, we have logs, we've got boards on the ceiling, which are actually supporting the upstairs floor. And instead of having a triple floor joist here at the edge of the stairway, instead we've got a log with a structural joint, another log coming and fitting in here. Now to make this work, we're going to show you that on our helpful hint. For today's helpful hint, we have a structural joint in a floor made out of log. Now this is just built just as accurate as we do a lot of the furniture stuff.
The socket that we're going to fit in here, cut into this log for our joint, is exactly the same as the first, 56 inches to the center, which is also the center of our tenon. But the number one thing that we want, that we have to do, is to drill a small hole, just a 1/2 inch diameter, but to drill it precisely. So we're going to use this laser guided drill, and with the laser shines exactly opposite of the drill bit. So as we drill the hole all the way through, and look back through the hole at our target, It's going to be, it's just like looking through the sights on a rifle at the target. Every hole that we drill after this is just following the guide hole that we drilled, and we just cut it out to the sizes that we want. First one here, as we get them, cut the holes larger, is this 1.5 inch diameter hole that we're cutting, and that one will match the pin size. That matches the pin size on the router. Now the router has a fence, so you can add a fence to it. But we fitted this other part in here with this fence with a pin on the bottom that's 1.5 inches in diameter, and the router can spin around this pin and make a cut all the way around and then move again, and make a cut all the way around and move again. We're going about 2.5 inches deep, and then what's left in the middle is this little donut that we just cut off with the chisel. On the opposite side of the log here, we're running the 2.1/8 inch diameter, again tracking that 1/2 inch hole. Now the 2.1/8 inch hole, the 2.1/8 inch hole is it'll fit a 3/4 inch washer, and then we'll cut the middle of the what's left of our 1/2 inch hole. We'll just cut that out to a 1 inch diameter and give room for the threaded log. We've got a finished length on our beam that's going to go between here, 93 inches. But what we have left, as far as the log itself, it's equivalent to, say, 4 2x10s. So it's very good as far as the strength that's left here. Now the tenon could be cut like this, or actually you can even cut it with a draw knife. But what you really want to have is, what you need to have is the end of the tenon to be precisely 90 degrees to the axis of the part. So as we fit this bolt plate in here, and we set this back in the socket, but the bolt plate itself is 90 degrees to the axis of the part, and of course having the threaded the nut exactly in the middle of the tenon. You don't want to cross thread this thing when you put it together. That would be really a bad day. To handle all these parts, I like using my come-alongs. They're just good, dependable power. I am not going to horse any of these parts into place. Some of they're not real big, but they're a couple 100 pounds, and the come-alongs make life so much easier. We'll get a second come along on here to pull it into place and just get it cinched up nice and tight, tighten up the bolts, and we're ready to lower this section into place. This is grade 5 threaded rod that we're using. It's pretty tough. You can really reef on this stuff. But look how beautiful that joint is. That is so nice and clean. It's really an accomplishment to be able to get a wood-to-wood joint, log-to-log, logs of equal size, and get it fitted together as a structural joint. It'd be easy if it was 2x10s, if you could use joist hangers and brackets, but I don't want any steel showing in this room, anything that would detract from the beauty of the room. We fitted this in so we can get the log circle stairway up against the wall and and the rest of the things going in here, it should be the most beautiful room in the house. Whenever you're building a house, there's certain guidelines that they follow for water usage. You got so many bedrooms, so many bathrooms, requires so much water, a certain size septic system. Okay, a similar thing is true in the forest. You have so many trees. They're competing all the time for the amount of water that's available, the amount of sunlight that's available. If you don't get enough sunlight, then they starve out from sunlight. They're susceptible then to disease, certain kind of bugs and things. If they don't get enough water, they're susceptible to little beetles that come and can live in the tree when the moisture content is too low. Then they can die. You might lose a whole stand of trees that looks really beautiful one year, and they starve out for water, they starve out for sunlight. You gotta thin the trees out. You have to maintain them. The forest behind us has the potential of being excellent, as long as it's maintained. Building with logs in mind, the most difficult part is the transition point when you go from the log, the irregular shaped log, to fit into a sheetrock wall, stud frame kind of a spot. So what we've done is cut a 7-inch diameter tenon, a round tenon on the end of each log that fits in a little, it's like a little cradle really, where each cradle is exactly the same, and the scribing that would be, most people are stuck with when they build with logs, the scribing is totally eliminated, and yet we maintain all of the natural character of the log work. Now the decking that you see here on the ceiling is actually full 1.5 inches thick with 1/2-inch plywood over the top. Now that's different from what we have on the rest of the ceilings. The rest of the ceiling is just, it's pretty and it looks nice, but what you look at how it's fastened, now how it's shot to the ceiling, how you got the tongue and the groove part and it's end matched and it fits all together like that, and you just use the rubber mallet to tap it in there with a little block of wood. But watch where the nails go in. They are shot in so that if there is any shrinkage of those boards, the nails will not show. They're tucked, pulled a little bit further back on the tongue. So when you're sitting there, laying in bed, looking at the ceiling, what you see is just beautiful board ceiling. You don't see any little nail heads later. It's just a excellently, very well installed ceiling. What we've done to force a free flow action to take place in the attic space of this house. Now, as air heats up, it just naturally rises. It just goes, and it just goes up all on its own. Well, the attic space in a house just normally heats up and gets hotter. So on the soffits that are in this house, the ones that run parallel to the ridge, those are vented aluminum soffits, and that allows air to come in to that soffit space and then enter into the attic space through a 1.5-inch high airspace that has 2 inches of styrofoam below it, and that makes this channel for the air to go into the attic space. And because as it gets into that space, you got the solar gain on the shingles and the air gets warmer and it rises, well then as it goes up, to get it out of the attic space, it is leaving through the soffits on the gable ends of the house. Now what we've done to the gable ends of the house is that there is vented aluminum soffit with a 3.5-inch high airspace where the air can just free flow out of the building. So it's continually washing this attic space with fresh air and removing the humidity from this house and keeping it drier and keeping anything that even resembles mold out of it. What you're looking at here is the ceiling of the dining room, and this is one of the few places where we have had to add things in for what's coming later. Now in a future episode we're going to be putting logs on the ceiling. There's log rafters and things that are fitted in, but to be ready for that we have these brackets, these angle iron brackets that are fitted on, one on each truss at the ridge and one on each truss where it meets the wall there. But this is what we're talking about when we are talking about building with logs in mind. Well, the house is up, the siding is on, the windows are in, and you can see a little bit of where we're going to be going with this house and what we're going to do with it. We want you to join us next time as we bring a piece of the woods into this house.
For more information about A Piece of the Woods Season 2 Conventional Building with Logs in Mind, go to www.apieceofthewoods.com. And there you'll also find the log furniture building episodes of Season 1. And remember, the woods is where treasure is hidden for you, not from you.
Underwriting for A Piece of the Woods was brought to you by
Extreme Interiors International, building log homes for over 20 years. But we don't stop at the structure. We expose the hidden art of nature, the diverse character of trees into your habitat. To us, it's not a building project, it's an art project.
There are still a few American companies dedicated to bringing quality into your workplace. We are one of them. Quality Manufacturing Company. Quality tools for quality work.
Tenonizer Technology, an original equipment manufacturer dedicated to improving the quality of log construction for the log building family, finding better ways to bring a piece of the woods into your home.
Great Woods Cabinetry is a full custom cabinet shop working projects from the start or just at the finish. From online to on-site, check us out at www.greatwoodscabinetry.com.